Hello everyone, welcome back to a day on myBlock. In real estate, there's something very important that we talk about. Besides location, we talk about value, and specifically market value. So how do we get to that value? So short of getting an appraisal, and that's a whole nother process, there are certain things, certain categories that realtors, brokers, and real estate investors look at to determine value, and obviously to find out, is it a good deal? Is it something I want to buy? Is it something I want to invest in, right? So today I'm fortunate enough to have Ty go through some details on those different categories, and specifically cash flow and cap rate, and give us an explanation on what those things mean and how we can help determine what a property's value is using these tools. So Ty, let's break it down.
Okay, so we're going to get to the fun part of real estate, owning commercial properties, heck, even down to a duplex, triplex. This is the fun part to me, and understanding what we're about to talk about today is cap rates. Everybody wants to talk about cash flow, right? But you really need to back up before you get to cash flow and talk about net operating income. And you cannot get to your cap rate until you find out your NOI. Okay, so let's start there, because real life, real money, real assets, that's what myBlock's all about, okay? So, let's start. Let's start with the income. Even though it's the last one, it's the most important piece in here. You need to have income, an income producing property, okay? And income is more than just your lease or your tenants or your rents. It could be, if it's an apartment building, it could be laundry. If it's, you can also sell storage. There's a lot of ways to produce income on an income producing property. And then you have to minus out your operating expenses, right? So your operating expenses, the usual suspects, your insurance, which is going to be your biggest item. Well, depending upon where you are, your property taxes, utilities, and then of course there's more like maintenance and management, and I can keep going, but this is your OpEx. So why is your operating income so important? Well, your operating income is what's going to give you, based upon the value of your area, right, a cap rate. And on the cap rate, we'll talk about that, and at the end we'll start with the cash flow piece. So let's talk about cap rates. So let's flip this over. Let's go to cap rate. Well, that was a weird R. Anyway, okay, so for your cap rate, let's say your property brings in net operating income, which we just defined, $200,000 a year. So for us here in the west side of Los Angeles, we are traditionally between 3 and 4%. Okay, that's the cap rate we usually have, and I know you're thinking, well, you can't just give us a cap rate. Well, we do. We need history, and history provides us with that information. So if you're in the 2s in the west side of LA, then we need to know why your property is so valuable. Due diligence is where that comes into play. If you're looking at a 4.5, 5 or plus cap, then you're talking about more than likely a fixer. Okay, so let's just use let's go in the middle, 3.5%. So if you NOI is 200,000. The cap is 3.5. Your property is worth approximately 5.7 million. Well, why is that important, and how is that? How did we? I didn't come up with a 3.5 out of thin air. I used history. But if you want to find the cap rate, all you have to do, the seller's trying to get 5.7 million. You use the $200,000 divided by 5.7, you'll get 3.5%. That's the cap rate. What if the owner was, only making 100,000 after you did your due diligence, and you found out the property's vacant half the time? So they only did $100,000, right? Well, you come over here, and the seller's still trying to get 5.7 million. you know, without being a mathematician, they're trying to sell it for a 1.75% cap rate. And you know in the area, no area that I know will support a 1.75% cap rate. What's important to note here is that the higher your cap rate, if you have a cap rate, if your neighborhood's supporting a 6, 7, 8% cap rate, you live in a more affordable area. If you're down below 3%, you live in the best areas, the best neighborhoods in the world, or your buildings are in the best neighborhoods in the world. And so that's why we use this. Now, how does the net operating income impact the cap rate? And then we go all the way back to this. Cash flow. Is this the cash flow? Is the 200,000 the cash flow? Well, not necessarily, because why? You have to remember there are two things you have to take into consideration. There's CapEx, okay, capital expenditures, and you also have to consider your mortgage. So this is a different topic, but I wanted to make sure that people understood the difference between net operating income, the cap rate, and then what cash flow is, because when we talk about cash flow, we have to talk about these two items, and that will be, you know, when we go into the benefits of owning commercial property, we'll get into those in the next segment. What's important is that you now know what a cap rate is, and you also know how to go ahead and use the math to get the cap rate and how important a cap rate is in your town. That's it.
Thank you, Ty. That was super helpful, and I hope all of you at home were taking notes. I definitely was, because I learned something every time. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We will be right back, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm Jen Day saying good day and good night.